You'll notice on your screen a little red light will have come up in the top left-hand corner. That is the recording button, and that lets us all know that we have started recording the session. So today, what is the webinar all about? Today's session is for adults with intellectual disability and their families. We're going to talk about open employment and how the recent changes, particularly in the NDIS, mean there are new options and new supports to help people work in open employment. This includes people who don't have a job, people who want to change jobs, including moving from an Australian disability enterprise, or people who need more support to keep their job in open employment than they're able to get, for instance, from a disability employment service. We'll have a look at the Everyone Can Work website, and we have a guest speaker to talk about their open employment experience. The Everyone Can Work website and webinars are developed by Inclusion Australia. And Inclusion Australia is a national peak organisation that represents people with intellectual disability and their families. The project is funded with an NDIS ILC grant. ILC stands for Information Linkages and Capacity Building and aims to create inclusive communities. And of course, here at IA, we believe that having a job in open employment is one of the most important and best ways to help people with intellectual disability be truly included in our community. We've already held another 3 workshops, webinars for different people at different ages and stages of their life. And those workshop videos are now available on the Everyone Can Work website under the workshops tab. Now, just to get going today, we just thought we'd run a very short icebreaker activity. It's sort of tricky to do this online rather than in person. But what we thought we'd ask you to do is just to type any questions that you've got about today into the chat. Is there something you were hoping to particularly learn today? Was there something that you particularly wanted us to cover? Hopefully we already have, but if not, there will be some chances to ask questions later on as well. And it gives me a bit of an idea on what things to focus on that are, particularly relevant for you. So
looks like she's gone.
Okay, I have no idea what happened then, but I vanished and came back. So I'll just have another go. Was there anything that anyone, I better get my chat, sorry, I've lost my chat in the process. Yes, does anyone have any questions or would anyone like today? Haven't read opportunities for self-employment. Yes, we did talk a little bit at the last webinar about micro enterprises, which is one of the options for self-employment. And so certainly there's probably a little bit more in the previous one till now. So one of the things you might like to do is look at the webinar recording that we have on the website for workshop 3, but we will talk about we probably won't talk quite so much about micro enterprise itself, but we will talk about the supports you can get, the funding supports that you can get in order to set up a micro enterprise. So that would be, hopefully that'll be helpful. All right. If anyone else would like to make any other suggestions or ask any questions as we go along, that would be absolutely fine. So, pathways to employment. What we do know is that pathways to employment for people with intellectual disability are quite limited. Most people with intellectual disability work in an Australian disability enterprise or take part in day programs, and only 15% of people work in open employment with wages. And there's a few reasons why this happens. One is low community expectations. You hear all the time things like, oh, that's all they can manage, or they wouldn't really be able to do a real job, or the only thing that's important is that they're happy with their friends. And all those things might be true in one way or another, but what they don't do is really get people into jobs. Another reason is lack of choice. You know, because of the low expectations, there were very few employment choices for people with intellectual disability until the NDIS came along. ADEs were and are often the only employment support option that people that are made available to people with intellectual disability. Certainly when you go onto the disability support pension, it's quite common for people with intellectual disability to only be offered employment support through an ADE, and that open employment is never mentioned. Even if open employment is mentioned, traditional employment support services, so DES, Disability Employment Services, mostly don't provide the level of support that people with intellectual disability need to find, and very importantly, keep a job. Sometimes you can get quite a bit of help to try and find a job, but it's actually the day-to-day or week-to-week process of staying in the job where people need a bit more support than what's available. And of course, it's hard to find information about open employment and to navigate the different employment support systems. I've mentioned Australian Disability Enterprises a couple of times. That's what the acronym ADE stands for. It's Australian Disability Enterprise. And they're the things that were known in the old days as sheltered workshops. So they're the funded supports where people with intellectual disability can get a job. But it's where all the people who work there have intellectual disability, and the people without disability tend to be the managers and the supporters. Some ADEs do actually sort of have, you know, manufacture something or provide a service. Some ADEs sort of do work practice, which often historically hasn't led to any what we would call open employment or jobs that pay a fair wage. The other reason that people often don't look at open employment is there are some misunderstandings about the impact on earning a wage on the disability support pension. Closed workplaces, or ADEs, tend to pay low wages at a rate that means that it doesn't affect their pension. But if it doesn't affect their pension, that means the amount of wages is very, very low. However, the DSP rules do allow for you to work up to 29 hours a week without losing your payment. And the rule is that for the first $178 a fortnight that you earn, it doesn't impact on your payment. And then after that, most people lose about 50 cents in the dollar. Some people lose about 40 cents in the dollar. That means that for every dollar of wage that you earn, you lose about 40 or 50 cents of disability support pension, which means that you earn more. Like you're always better off. You always earn more if you actually earn an income. And so one of the things that we would really like to explain to people is, you know, the benefits of earning an income. But all of this has made it very hard for people with intellectual disability to choose open employment and to get the supports. And a lot of you will probably know this firsthand. But there have been some recent changes to employment supports that might make it easier and open up new possibilities for you. So we'll talk about these changes today, and we'll just note that there is more information on the Everyone Can Work website, which was developed to bring together all of the information that you need to think about work options and find the support you need. We know here at Inclusion Australia just how hard it is to sort of navigate between the different systems. You know, one's the NDIS, the other one's is the Commonwealth Government, plus you've got the DSP, and working your way through that can be so hard to navigate. So that was the whole rationale for the Everyone Can Work website, to try and bring together all that information in one easy to access space. Now, if you've been to any of our other webinars or you've seen online, we always like to tell you a story and have a guest presenter tell you their story about open employment, tell you a little bit about what supports or what pathway they needed to get into employment, and to tell you how things have gone for them. So today I'd like to introduce Justin Thomas. Justin works at the New South Wales Council for Intellectual Disability as an advocacy worker. He's passionate about the rights of people with intellectual disability in the justice system. Justin has had to overcome many hurdles as a young person and as a young adult. Justin will be sharing his experience of getting into the workforce later in life. And just so you know, when we say later in life, what we mean is people that didn't go into the workforce when they left school and maybe have done some other things and now a little bit older, maybe in their 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, want to do something different to get into work. I'd really like to thank Justin for being part of this Everyone Can Work webinar and invite him to give his presentation now. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin, and I'm going to give you a little insight of my lived experience story. So in 2007, 2008, I joined a company employing people with disability out west, mowing lawns for like $4 to $5 per hour. I was working Monday to Friday, but it wasn't enough money to go on with, so I told them I wasn't interested in doing it anymore. I didn't have a job after that. But soon after that, I met IDRS because of my court cases. IDRS had me going to these peer support groups, and I found these more important than mowing lawns and all that. So I enjoyed meeting new people, which I'm very sociable and always trying to interact. And I struck around long enough for them to give me a $5,000 grant to run workshops on My Choice Matters. And I had never done anything like that before, but trying new things. And I knew in the long run that would get paid to run workshops out of it. After that, IDRS included me doing things like meetings, government meetings with Centrelink and the police force. And they helped me make a video about me being picked on by law enforcement back in the day, and took me to the Valor Conference meetings every year. I did my presentation at Valor's Having a Say conference, where I met self-advocates like Lee Crichton and Robert Strye. I thought they were pretty good, the way they talk about advocacy and things about disability and having lived experience with disability. It was brave for them to talk about disability institutions. And for me, I talked about disability in the justice system. Since then, I've been to reintegration conferences, people who have experienced prison, speaking up about issues within the prison system. I also have been to the United Nations, Geneva, to fight for this justice failed system failing as a delegation for Australia. Now I work for New South Wales CID doing advocacy. I also work for organisations and have my own business, so I have to do invoices. Yesterday at work, I had to raise an alarm about advocacy for housing for people with disability. There is a lack of funding, and it is a long-term issue like housing. A lot of it's unsafe. We need housing rights for people with disability. I am a good saver. The less things I buy on a weekly basis, the more I can save in my account. Depending on my finances at work, there have been times where there has been $600 in my account and just sits there. I encourage all pensioners to go to work. Every pensioner gets 1,000 working credits to help them get work. It keeps you busy on a daily basis, and keeps you active and gives you something to look forward to. It's been great to have a job, and I'm always looking forward to new challenges and new things. It gives me something to look forward to.
Thank you so much, Justin. Is giving presentations like this one of the things that you really like doing?
This is weird doing online.
It is, isn't it? You mainly do them face to face?
Yeah, but lately, I just still adapting to online, using online stuff.
Do you find it weird being able to see yourself on camera? Does that distract you while you're talking? It does a bit. Does anyone have any questions I'd like to ask? Justin, you can put yourself on, turn your microphone on or type something into the chat. I'm interested, Justin, how old were you, if you're happy to tell, how old were you when you got your first open employment job?
I think 2003.
So, so you've been working a while. And about how old were you then?
No, but on and off, because I've had issues in my life and what around then, and
Yeah.
I've actually got a structured job in the construction industry 2003 for a few years, but then things happened and I lost my job out of that too, and the company went overseas and all that.
So who's helped you? Is it mainly IDRS, or have you ever used a DES?
They actually believe they're the legal side of things with CID and legal side of things with people with disability. And I had court cases going and minor things, and they led me to go to these peace support groups, and I enjoy doing it because I like meeting new people and see what's out there.
Do you need much help? Like, how much support do you get? Does CID give you support during the day to sort of talk about how work's going?
Yes. I always get someone that go through paperwork with me and do some preparation for speaking and all that kind of stuff.
And you said also doing your invoices when you just do it for yourself.
Yeah, I even get help to do that too.
That's good. That I know my husband's a builder, and you know, he likes to do the building part of it. He doesn't like to do the invoicing part of it, but it's an important part of bringing in the money.
That's right.
Has anyone else got any questions for Justin? No? All right. So, Justin, that was really interesting and really helpful. And of course, we've been recording this, so people will see this, you know, will come and watch what you've got to say online. I think it's really important that we hear from people about how important work is, you know, like you said, you know, something to give you some purpose to every day and look forward to it. And I wanted to thank you for the effort that you've put in to preparing your presentation for us today. That was really helpful.
It's all right.
And we very, very much enjoying seeing your smiling face there. I think we're about going to put the PowerPoint back up again now to keep me on track as well. So again, we barely need to do the next slide because the next slide's about why is open employment important. And I think Justin pretty much told us all the reasons why open employment is important. It's, and first of all, actually, I should clarify why we keep using the word open when we talk about employment. It's about the fact that open employment is open to everyone, people with and without disability working together, just in the jobs that we see advertised all the time. It's the same job market that we're all in. Whether you work as an employee or set up your own business to earn an income. As we heard, Justin does both. He would get paid wages through his work at CID, and then sometimes when he does other things, he would send out an invoice of his own. And of course, everyone has the right to open employment, but the thing is the data from the NDIS shows that only about 15% of people with intellectual disability achieve this. Now, the reason that people are here today is presumably because you're interested in working in open employment. Maybe you'd like to change jobs, or maybe you'd like to get more support if you already have a job, or maybe you'd like to start your own business. There's a whole lot of different things that you might want to do. And the question is, how can you get the support to do this? We really want to make people feel knowledgeable and confident about taking this path. Now, researchers have talked to people with intellectual disability and their families about their employment experiences. And they find that people have a better quality of life, that improve physical and mental health working in open employment, even if it's just a few hours per week. And this is because earning a fair wage leads to a better standard of living and less risk of poverty. We heard Justin talk about the fact that when his first job, he wasn't earning enough money, and that wasn't, enough to keep him safe and healthy. And so it's really important that people can earn enough money. People feel more important and valued when they learn and use new skills, and it improves how other people see them. People working in open employment means meeting more people, making more friends, and having more social opportunities. I think Justin mentioned that as well. It brings to open independence, and people tend to work longer in open employment, which leads to a fuller life with more purpose and meaning. So now, finding and keeping a job, what works? Eben, could I have the slide up to keep me on track? So there are a number of things that the research shows that helps increasing success in finding and keeping a job in open employment. These include high expectations. So until recently, many people didn't really have a choice when it came to employment. But the thing that we know, particularly with families and of yourselves, that the biggest predictor of being successful in employment is actually the expectation. It's family expectation that you're going to get a job, or your own expectation. This is what I want to do. Be involved. Families are a really important support, but what we know is for a lot of older people, they often might, with intellectual disability, they might not have that much family active in their life. And so there's other support that you can get too. Justin told us about being involved in advocacy and self-advocacy groups, peer support groups. So finding other people similar age to yourself with similar experiences, sometimes support staff. This is a moment where I'd like to mention the Inclusion Australia members. Inclusion Australia is a national organisation, but we have state members, and they're all leaders in intellectual disability in their own state. So Justin's already mentioned New South Wales CID, Council for Intellectual Disability, which is a statewide organisation in New South Wales. And so I'd suggest that anyone who's in New South Wales who has an intellectual disability might want to contact them for some support and information. Similarly, if you're in Victoria, Valid might be an organisation that you contact. In Queensland, Parent to Parent Queensland. In South Australia, there is the South Australian Council on Intellectual Disability, known as SACID, SACID. In Tasmania, there's a Speak Out Association, and they have they're active statewide. And also in Western Australia, there's DDWA, Developmental Disability WA. And all of these organisations are advocacy and self-advocacy and peer support organisations who can link you in with other people whose experience you might be able to learn from. The other thing that we know is that customised employment works. So this helps you work out what you want to do, helps you get ready for employment, and helps you get work that suits you. There are parts of this called discovery and job creation. And so this might include things like carving out a job. There might be a job at an organisation, and there might be a few things that might be quite hard for a person with intellectual disability to do, or there might be some stuff that suits you down to the ground. And it's getting that job, carving that job up to just be just right for you. And the other thing that works, of course, is starting a business that's just right for you. And starting a business, a lot of people with intellectual disability start what's called a micro enterprise. So that's a very small business where maybe the person with intellectual disability is the only person who's in the business, or maybe it might be a couple of people, but they tend to be very small businesses. On-the-job learning is another thing that we know. So people with intellectual disability learn work skills best in the workplace. And it's one of the reasons why hardly anyone ever moves from an Australian disability enterprise into open employment, is because the work that you might do at the Australian disability enterprise is not related at all to the work that you might do somewhere else. So one of the things that we talk about is place then train. So we talk about getting a job and then learning about work once you've already got the work position. And research shows us that a significant amount of experience will increase the chance of finding and keeping work in open employment. And this includes work experience, volunteering, visiting workplaces and part-time jobs, and of course, especially paid jobs. So everything from working at McDonald's when you're, quite young to the work experience you might do at school. Even it doesn't matter what age you are, sometimes volunteering somewhere will let you know whether that works well. I know that one of the it's an interesting person I know, not a person with disability, but when they finished their design degree at university, couldn't get a job. And so decided that they'd just volunteer at the local Down Syndrome Association to because they wanted to give back and they were trying to figure out what they were going to do. So they did a little bit of volunteering and they helped produce the annual report. And then the CEO noticed the annual report and said, who did this work? And then got offered a bit of paid work. And these days, this person works doing quite a lot of work in comms and design and campaigns for people with disability in general. So the really great thing was that person started volunteering just out of the desire to keep busy and meet new people and do something for an organisation they thought was really valuable. They didn't see that as becoming, part of their career path, but in the end it did. So volunteering is another great way for older people to, when I say older, you might not be very old, but leaving school, it's a really good way to get a taste for different types of jobs and using your skills in different ways. And the other thing we know is that people with intellectual disability often need support to keep their job. And that might be every day, it might just be from time to time, or it might just be when there's changes. But if that support is not there, often something can happen and you can lose your job. So you heard Justin sort of talk about the fact that he gets some ongoing support from CID and gets different people to support him at different parts of his day and his week. And that means that the risk of losing his job is lessened, because if there are any little things that come up along the way, there's someone to talk through the issues. Eben, are you able to share? I still can't see the slides. Are you able to share the slides? So what support is there to find and keep a job? This is the critical thing for people who are looking for work older. Until quite recently, most people who were in the NDIS who wanted to work used their NDIS plans to work in an ADE because that was the only employment support they were offered. Or it was the only place where they could get a high level of support. People could also use their NDIS plans to access day programs. Some people might have used disability employment services, but they often found that they needed ongoing and higher support that DES could offer. But the fantastic thing is that recent changes help people with intellectual disability who need higher levels of support to work in open employment. Oh, you can see them. That's interesting. Yeah, maybe since I dumped out. As long as everyone can see the slides, that's what matters. The main problem for me is we are going to talk about the website soon, and I can't see the slides. And I'll be talking about the slides that are on the screen then. Oh, that's right. Oh, well, if most people can see them, it's maybe something weird happened when I dropped out of the webinar a bit earlier. But the important changes more recently are that NDIS participants of working age can ask for supports in their plan to find and keep a job in open employment. And open employment can mean an employee or self-employed or a family business or anything that is genuine work. And the employment support funding can be used very flexibly depending on each person. This can include customised employment that I mentioned before. So it might be helping people to work out and explore what they are interested in, to find and do the relevant work experience, to develop skills, to get job ready and to get the work that suits them, including as an employee or self-employment. The ongoing supports can be used to provide high-level support to keep your job or run your business, such as a micro-enterprise, and that might be support every day. So there's quite a few people, particularly early on, who learn about open employment who do need support every day to be able to do their job. This can This includes if you already work in open employment or aren't getting enough support through a DES. So if you're already employed but it's not going well or you need more support, it's a new thing that you might now be able to use your NDIS plan to help you keep that job. And then the other thing is to help people who want to change jobs. So it might be going from an ADE into open employment. It might be going from an existing job to another existing job, or it might be going from a day program to employment. So some people might be getting supports to access the community through a day service, but might like to change what they're doing into a job and earning money. So the main thing is that you need an employment-related goal in your NDIS plan. And if you do want to do that, then it's a good idea to contact your local area coordinator or your planner to discuss employment supports. It's really important to think about what your goal is and the support you need before the planning meeting. And it's okay for your goal to be, I would like to get a job, but I don't know what job. I would like to build my skills and figure out what's a good job for me. So you don't have to say, I'm going to get a job doing X. You can just say, I would like to get a job and I want to figure out how to get there. That is a good enough employment goal for you to get some employment supports in your plan, in your NDIS plan, if you're an NDIS participant. The other thing I just wanted to let you know about was support to find and keep a job also now includes NDIS supports called specialised supported employment. Now, some people will need higher intensity, often daily support delivered in the workplace to maintain employment. And these are, of course, the supports that have typically been available in an ADE. But now, those sorts of supports can be used in a range of employment settings, including private, government, non-for-profit organisations, social enterprise or similar environment, self-employment, micro-business, or a family-run business. So that means that the supports that you used to only be able to get in an ADE, you can now get in all sorts of open employment settings. So since this July 2020, the NDIS has introduced these new specialised supported employment support items for people who are employed and who are less independent in performing their work tasks or need frequent prompting and coaching to stay on track, communicate with others, or manage their behaviours. Supports can be provided one-to-one or within a group setting. So if you're in an ADE and you're only getting support in a group, you can now say to your ADE, actually, I would like to change this and I would like one-to-one support. Although you must make sure you've got a plan that supports that. So you can do it in a group if that's what works best for you. You can use it to complement existing or expected employer supports, and they get claimed by the provider according to how often, like the intensity, as in is it one-to-one or in a group, or how often the supports are delivered to achieve the employment goals. So the sorts of things that you can now use this funding, and this is a new thing, you can ask an Australian disability enterprise if you're already working at one to provide you support outside their setting. So instead of going into the place at the Australian Disability Enterprise, they can now support you in their local community. And that, we haven't seen a lot of evidence of it yet because of COVID, but it does give ADEs who have lots of local connections and they know people with intellectual disability well, and they know the individual people maybe in their ADE well. This is an opportunity for them to find them work in the community, not just in the segregated setting that is an ADE. So you can use your plan to do on-the-job assessments related to the impact of a person's disability on their ability to work. So that's maybe about adjusting, if it takes you a bit longer to do things, about adjusting the job to allow for that. Might be job cost customization that I've mentioned before. It might be on-the-job training and intermittent support with daily work tasks. You can ask your ADE to find you some work experience somewhere else so that you can start to find out what you like. There are two great things about work experience. One of it is that you get to learn about work on the job. And the other thing is you get to have a taste of something. So, I've used this example before, but my son thought he might like to work at McDonald's because he's a big fan of hot chips. But in fact, when he got to McDonald's, he actually found out you have to, the first week he was there, he learned how to clean the tables. The second week he was there, he learned how to clean the floor. The third week he was there, he learned how to clean the windows. The fourth week he was there, he was taught how to take things out to a special rubbish bin. And what he found out was, as you can hear, that if you work in fast food, there's a hell of a lot of cleaning involved. And so he decided actually that he liked his other little job at the local basketball stadium canteen much more, because he got to serve the food and he got to chat to people and give change and do a whole lot of things, which is actually really what he wanted to do. So work experience can help you work out what you like doing, and it can also help you work out what happens in jobs, that sometimes what you see from the outside is not what you see from the inside of a job. Maybe you only notice a little part of, like if you work at the supermarket. I have a young lady that I know who thought she really wanted to work at a supermarket, but actually what she really likes doing is doing the scanning at the checkout. And that was good, but she really didn't like putting things on the shelves, putting things away, doing the facing up, putting the trolleys away. And it's like, no, if you want to work at the supermarket, you've got to be prepared to do all those jobs, not just the one job. And so learning things about that can be really helpful.
Catherine, can I just ask a question there? I actually had the same experience. Actually, someone wanted to work at McDonald's, and they were happy to clean tables, but as a result of being part of the cleaning job, they realised that they would have to clean toilets, and that was a big no-no. Therefore, that was no longer an option for them. So that was quite interesting what you're saying there. I can relate, definitely. So I'll start my video so you can see me. What I was going to ask was volunteering. What's the acceptable amount of time that someone should or can volunteer for before it's deemed as,
exploitation?
Exploitation, that's the word, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think that's a very individual question. But one of the tips I would give there is to negotiate that up front. So yes. The story I've used in other settings is not so much someone starting a bit later in life, but I didn't realize at the time, someone had given me the tip, but I didn't realize how important it was. My son got a job at a local basketball stadium canteen. So typical first job, serving, they serve, all four types of food: hot chips, dim sims, potato cakes and chicken chips, and cold drinks and things like that. And what we said is could it be work experience until he was as productive as anyone else, and then we expected him to be paid, and they agreed with that. So having the expectation up the front that something will transition from one thing to another thing is a really important thing, that expectation is laid out early. In our case, it took about a year. So that was a 3-hour job once a week. So it took him about 12 months and in fact, it was weird because we took some photos and what have you for a presentation he was going to give about work, and the manager came in and watched him make a coffee and went, "Oh dear, we better pay you." Now that was work experience. And one of the things to consider in terms of volunteering positions versus work experience versus getting paid is the issue of insurance. It's about what happens if you get injured. So it depends where you are.
That's right.
And it was a thing that was really brought home to me. My son did a work experience at Bunnings, and it was going along really well until he thought, because he was a teenager, he thought it'd be funny to play hide and seek. He thought he was being cute. And you can imagine that the forklift drivers didn't think it was very cute to have someone hiding in the spots where you were supposed to put a pallet. So in fact, that nearly went very pear-shaped for him. But at least I knew he was covered by insurance. So you can be covered by insurance in all three settings, like as a volunteer. So a lot of organisations will have volunteer insurance. If you're work experience, it depends what state you're in. So for example, in Victoria, you're expected to get paid a nominal amount per day, maybe $5 a day. And that's a thing that, and the employer should have have the work experience students recorded as part of their work cover that they do. I've heard in Western Australia that the work cover requirements don't require getting paid. So you have to investigate that locally. And then of course, if you're getting paid, you're getting paid. You're covered by insurance there. If you're running your own business, you want to think about getting some accident insurance as well, or even income protection insurance and other things, depending on exactly what you're doing. But yeah, I think, you know, for different people, depending on their skill level, it could be reasonable to say a few weeks. It could be reasonable to say a few months. And in our case, I was prepared to accept a year. But it needs to be really clear that it's going to change, and that you have to preset what's the threshold of what does productivity mean, you know, because we know that people with intellectual disability can take longer to learn things.
Yeah, I think I'm actually from an ADE, where we are doing that transition into customised employment, open employment for those that are willing to return, because we've been closed for this 8 months. For those that are willing to move out from the ADE and into open employment, we're working through that. And we've said that once we find that square hole for that square peg and that job carving's complete, there'd be a 12-week period where they would perform that carved out position with that employer, and then be assessed by, is it job access?
It depends. If you're doing the supported, if you're looking at the supported wage system, possibly. I think it's quite okay to have that as a framework, and then I think you'd want to make sure that it's flexibility. I mean, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for ADEs, because the problem that we have with disability employment services is that these days only 3.4% of people that participate in DES are people with intellectual disability, and we've lost a whole lot of the skill that you need. And I think this is an amazing opportunity for ADEs to really that they've got local connections, they know about supporting people with intellectual disability, they know how to break down tasks, they know how to do all these things, and get them out of a setting where maybe they're not doing real work, or they've, you know, been practicing work for a long time. Actually getting out into the local community and doing real jobs is just, I commend you, because I think if I was running an ADE, I think this is a real opportunity. And in fact, you know, it's a real opportunity to make a real difference and transform your business. So I think good on you. And so you can use the money towards physical assistance and personal care in the workplace. You can use it to manage disability related behaviour or complex support needs, and also non-face-to-face activities that are directly related to supporting a participant's employment. That would be, for you, probably finding the things. The only thing I would caution against is trying to find exactly the square hole for the square person, so to speak, that everyone fits. That sometimes it's a matter of getting in there and then figuring it out a bit, and that you can carve it out once people are in the job. So if you've got a willing employer and you haven't figured out all the things they can do, getting the person in first and not trying to make it perfect first is a better way around, rather than, so better to get them in and then sort of carve it around them, rather than try to get it perfect before they go in, because there might be surprising things that come out of it while you're thinking about it.
I think there's one of the buzzwords was informational interviewing, and that's actually going to the employer without anyone in mind and finding out what their job is and how they recruit and what sort of things fall down when they're in the busy period, and what things don't happen, and can we carve something into that. So yeah, exactly what you're saying, working out with them first and then trying to find that fit afterwards.
Yeah, and then finding someone, so you probably don't want to find someone where they have a lot of filing to be done or a lot of shredding or office work to be done if someone wants to work outside all day.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, you might find someone that says, like I talked about the young woman who just wanted to do the scanning. I think someone like her, if she hasn't seen a lot of what happens in an office. I think if she was in an office and she learned some of the tasks that you do in the office, she might be really, really happy. Or she might, and that same young woman did one work experience where she hated it, absolutely hated it. And I remember saying to her mother afterwards, she was like, oh, it was terrible. She didn't like it at all. And I was like, that's great. And she was like, what do you mean that's great? And I go, well, now she really know what things she didn't like. Like, why didn't you like it? What were the things that you didn't like doing? And that can be really, really helpful to find out.
Yeah, we've got one fellow who's happy and bubbly and awesome. And that's because he knows us. And he wants to work in a bar where as soon as you put him in that situation, he clams up and he's very shy and he doesn't like talking to strangers. So, okay, well, let's carve that out a bit more, and still be in that location, but what job is it that we could, Yeah,
and also just figuring it out, because some people just take a long time to warm up, and so my son quite likes replenishing fridges and things like that. You know, he likes that it's all tidy afterwards, you know, when he puts everything in. And so there are jobs that you can do that are related, but maybe not in the middle of it, having to deal with all of the... Yeah,
not frontline, but sort of behind the scenes, but still involved. Yeah.
So it works out. Oh, and it's interesting, you know, a lot of people are very positive towards people with intellectual disability getting jobs. I notice even in my local supermarket where there's a couple of people with intellectual disability, and you notice that some people avoid them, I suppose, because maybe they're a bit slower in terms of if you're in a rush and you want to get in and out quickly. But a lot of other people go out of their way to get served because they're really pleased to see people, you know, working in open employment. So, you know, I think that's the thing about job carving and all the things, that it's about being flexible and seeing how it can all come together.
Thank you.
This would be the moment, if any, there was a question in the chat before about micro enterprises and the like. If anyone's got a specific question they wanted to ask about that, now would be a good time, because I am going to start talking about the website in another few minutes and about navigating the website and the information there. So if you had any other questions you wanted to ask, I would invite you to either turn off take yourself off silent or pop them into the chat. All good. Emma, did you have any other questions? I've got about 3 more minutes before I need to move on to the stuff about the website, if anyone had any more questions.
I've got millions of questions, probably not on this forum, but I'll definitely be in contact with you maybe down the track, or just keep doing these webinars and learning new things.
Yeah, well, certainly we're about to tell you what's on the Everyone Can Work website, and that would be where we'd go. Unfortunately, Inclusion Australia we're a systemic advocacy organisation. We don't provide individual support. It's one of the reasons why we went for this, the website, which is, like, it's great having all the information in one spot, but of course, what do you do about the questions that you have and all the rest of it? So we just encourage you to send questions into us, because we'll still be upgrading and improving the website over the next few months. We're about to put a whole lot of evidence. So all of the information that we have there is evidence-based. We had a bit of a technical glitch before we started. We're about to make that section of the website live so that you can see the evidence of why we make certain suggestions and have certain tips. We'll also have more over the next couple of months. We'll be gradually increasing the number of videos on the site that will have some personal stories about people's success or tips and tricks to do things. So
great. Well, you're starting my bookmarks already with the website, and I've enrolled in all the bits and pieces. So I think I'm doing what I need to do and just keeping checking in on what you're adding. So that's great to know. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And of course, if you sign up to our e-news on the Inclusion Australia website, you anytime that we put new things, you keep an eye on social media, but certainly in the e-news, we will continue to publicise when we've put new things on the website. So if I'm going to talk about the website, let's have a quick look at it now. What it contains, find out the things that you want to do. So it's for people with intellectual disability at their families at different ages and stages. So it might be just when you might have young children and you're just thinking, oh, is there anything I should be doing about employment now? And the answer is yes. You know, things like talking about being a worker and being positive about your own experiences of work and encouraging play, you know, to do things. It might be that you're a school leaver, and so you're thinking about all of the planning that you might need to do then so that you can move from school and not drop off the cliff that some families, you know, historically have told us is what happens when people leave school. And in this case, talking about getting employment later on, what is it that if you've already been in, for example, an Australian disability enterprise for quite a while, what about if you wanted to try something different? What are the ways that your Australian disability enterprise could think about how they support you differently and use all that skill and expertise that they have to do things differently? So the sort of information that's on the website is practical information at each stage. So we particularly talk about, you know, young, sort of pre-age of 14, all in one big. We talk specifically about age 15 because that's really important. That's when you become of working age. We're talking about age 16 because that's when you do work experience, and also that's when you can get the DSP. And then we particularly also talk about older people who were only given supports, you know, back in the much more ration system, and so now find themselves with NDIS plans that would allow them to do more, but they're older, and so the pathway is less clear. The information includes research about open employment. As I said, we provide the evidence that backs up our suggestions, people's real life open employment stories, and some easy to understand videos, plain language, and easy read information. In particular, Emma, there are some easy read materials about what is work and what is open employment, and things about the DSP on the website that you could print out and talk to some of the people that you're supporting. So that's a really important element for us, that people have access to accessible information that's relevant to them. And certainly, again, if you feel like there's a real gap there, by all means, just drop us a line and say, I think it'd be really, really good if you had a tip sheet on this that's directed at people with intellectual disability. So the website's been designed so you can revisit at different stages to find the information that you need. So how do you find the information that you need right now? You can do that a couple of different ways. You can just click on the tabs or on the boxes, you know, in terms of the headings that are on the website, or you can also use the website search function, just search for what you're looking for, or you can use the My Employment Pathway. So the My Employment Pathway is at the top of the website. You'll be able to see it on the screen now where it says Start Here. If you click on that, sorry about that. If you click on the My Employment Pathway and answer the questions, whether you're a person with intellectual disability or not, and then you answer a few questions, it will curate a series of the resources that are on the website that are likely to be the most useful to you and offer you them as the first choice. So that's one way of finding some things that are on the website that are related to you quite quickly. And then the other thing we've done is create an A to Z of open employment. And this helps to explain some of the technical terms used on the site and by government services. And in particular, the A to Z talks about, like, a lot of stuff to do with DES. We have the acronym DES at the beginning. So that's all together in the same section of the A to Z. Some stuff related to the NDIS will all have NDIS in front of it. So if you scroll down to N and look through a whole lot of things there, there's a whole lot of particularly definitions and explanations of what the words mean, and sometimes about how the words relate to each other. We've had some quite good feedback on that this part of the website is helping people understand the quite complex systems and all of the acronyms and insider language that's used on the government websites and on disability sector websites. So that was funny. I did say to you before that I had about 3 minutes extra, and it looks like I'm going to finish about 3 minutes early. So if anyone does want to ask any more questions at the end, you're very, very welcome. I'd like to thank you for taking part in the webinar today. On the screen, there should be a variety of ways to contact us, including our Twitter handle and our admin email address. Although I do have to caution you that we have very limited resources, and so it's really hard for us to give any sort of individual responses to questions. As always, as I mentioned earlier, this has been funded through an ILC grant. And so it's always really helpful to us to be able to tell our funders what in fact was helpful and what wasn't. So particularly if you did manage to do that quick pre-survey or pre-webinar survey, it'd be really helpful if you were able to do the post-webinar survey as well that Katie's just put into the chat. And if you had 30 seconds or a minute to do that, that would help us know whether or not, or find out what it was that you found helpful. And certainly as we do these things in the future, any feedback that we can get about what part of it was the most helpful bit, that will be what we will, concentrate on in future webinars or future face-to-face, or hopefully future face-to-face workshops. Of course, we had planned originally to go around the country with some face-to-face workshops, but that wasn't to be. So if you click on that link that's in the chat, that will open up in your browser, and it's just a matter of answering a few questions and clicking submit. Like to thank you for your interest today. As I said, I'm happy to hang around for another couple of minutes if anyone has any more questions, but certainly we would wish you all the best of luck in finding innovative and person-centred ways of helping people be employed and contributing to the community. I'll finish with just one little story about a person that I didn't know at the basketball club. My son plays mainstream basketball and had that little job at the basketball stadium. But my brother-in-law, my nephew, is actually part of the same basketball club. They live a couple of suburbs away, and they were at a basketball match on a Friday night, and they were looking at a kid with a mild physical disability. And one of the dads said to the other, "Oh, I wonder, you know, I'm not quite sure, you know, what disability do you think he had?" And then the other dad said something, and then the first dad said, "Actually, I don't even know why I'm asking you that. I mean, who cares what disability he has?" He said, "It's really great to see the kids getting game." He said, "Actually, do you know there's a kid with Down syndrome who plays for the club?" And my brother-in-law nodded and didn't confess that it was actually his nephew. And the man said, "I feel good about being part of a club where that kid gets a game." And I think that's how a lot of people feel. And at that point, my brother-in-law talked about the connection, but that I feel good about being somewhere where that kid gets a game. I think there's a lot of people who feel good about shopping at a place where that kid gets a job, or being part of a community where that person is a valued member. And I'd certainly encourage you all to do everything you can to make that come to life, and whatever we can do to support that, we will do. And I have completely forgotten that, in fact, we have a very little video to play you that goes for about a minute as the wrap up. So I will introduce Ron now, and we'll play this little video, and then that will be the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for your interest.
Thanks, Catherine. Oh, there's no volume on him. I can't hear him talking.
My name's Ronnie, 1951 I was born. I work up in IGA supermarket that got me to sort out fruit and vegetables, and then after that I went upstairs. They gave me a lot of training to do, and I put IGA pamphlets into the local papers, and it keeps me busy too. I know jobs are hard to get, but work to me, it makes me feel proud, and also it means save up for things what you need, and also go on holidays. I love my job, and I got a good boss, and I got good workmates around me. If you haven't got friends, life could be miserable, but
and there you go. You just got a little sneak peek of one of the people that appears on the video that we will be launching in the next few weeks. So thank you once again. Any final questions, or otherwise, can I wish you all the best for the rest of your week?
Wonderful. Thanks very much for that.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See ya.